Hello, you can call me Lore, and first I'm gonna take a picture of myself because I feel cute. I'm 2 minutes into this video and I haven't done anything except taking photos of myself. Okay. Alright. Yikes. Hello, you can call me Lore. Welcome back to my channel, and at the beginning of October I got to attend this crazy and mysterious haunted house LARP called the Haunting of Grey Manor.
We're gonna talk about things and maybe make some things too.
Previously, I made an announcement video where I talk a little bit more about the nitty-gritty details of the event, and so if you haven't seen that, I would suggest giving that a watch before watching this Storytime video, because it's going to give a little bit more context to what I'm going to talk about. The Haunting of Grey Manor was a LARP put on by Reverie Studios, and is what we call a Nordic-style LARP. Now, when I say Nordic LARP, I'm referring to a term and a style of play that was often practiced in Scandinavian countries, aka Nordic. So, this style of LARPing generally has a strong emphasis on collaboration or collective creation or storytelling. So pretty much what that all means is that there's normally a really high degree of immersing yourself as your character in the world. So this LARP was actually held in a Masonic temple in Boston, Massachusetts. This venue was super duper awesome. It had 3 floors, a basement, and a bunch of interconnecting rooms for all kinds of spooky activities. During the event itself, Reverie Studios used a combination of lighting and really cool decoration to turn this already ridiculous venue into this dark and mysterious playground for us to really immerse our characters in. In addition to that, they were also working with a music and sound designer to make something called an immersive soundscape. So literally the actions and the mood that was happening in the house kind of affected the tone of the music, creating this really amazing live soundtrack. So we did not gather for this game until Friday evening, and we had this light icebreaker, we had a little bit of a social mixer, and then we had some very optional dancing. But I did want to take a moment to kind of talk about this icebreaker because it was genius. So they had us pair off and play games of rock, paper, scissors. As you lost, you then would follow your victor around and cheer and yell their name. So eventually we get to this point where we have 2 massive groups yelling and cheering the name of these 2 victors facing off in this really epic battle of rock, paper, scissors. This icebreaker was ingenious because it was actually a thinly veiled exercise on being a fan of the players. In Nordic style LARP, because of its collaborative nature, it's really only as good as everyone makes it, which means that you really have to lift up each other's stories. It's not about winning or losing, it's about being in there together, being in there to create an amazing storyline. On Saturday, we had both the workshop and the game itself. So in the workshop, we talked about mechanics, of which there were many, because this was a game in which your character could succumb to the mysteries of the house, which meant you could die. Dying was also, it was a decision. It was a decision that you made for your character as a player and as a character. However, if you did decide to pass beyond the veil, the game wasn't over for you. You actually had a completely new perspective as the spirit. As the night progressed, the house became more and more available only to the spirits, which were denoted by these really cool and clever wall hangings. We also covered consent mechanics, player cues, and safe spaces, which are all integral to any LARP, but I feel like are especially so to LARPs like this with really dark and emotional themes. So I feel like it's important to mention for all my crazy costuming comrades out there that it seems pretty normal to come to the workshop in your costume or in a modified version or outfit for your character. I like to do it, I mean I look for any reason to dress up, but I like to do it because I think it helps me get a little bit bit more immersed while we're doing the role-playing exercises to kind of settle into our characters. And so I wore this number to the workshop. It was very comfy, and man, I love that vest. I really like dressing like this. I used to dress like this in high school, I'll say, and I'm gonna redo my wardrobe. Let's start again. It's still dark. Opening more blinds. So after the workshop, we had a small break where we could chat in or out of character with other characters, or if you were like me, you could run back to your B&B and finish getting completely dressed, because when you came back to the venue, it was dinner time and pretty much event on in character mode engaged. So I went home, threw on my dinner makeup and my full outfit, and it came back, and when I came back, the sheer eclectic, wonderful mix of characters and outfits was just beautiful. So we all arrived and we're kind of shuffled downstairs outside of this main dining hall where we're all just kind of in character, uncomfortably shuffling, sometimes talking, recognizing other characters that our characters know, and having these small conversations. In the lore of this game, we have been invited to this notoriously paranormal house by a mysterious host that it seems nobody really knows. So the premise of my character, Cassidy Robar, was that she did not receive a traditional invitation, but she would proceed to tell people that she thought that it was a normal spooky house party, and honestly the only reason that she was there was because her therapist told her to go to try and relax. I will clue you in on Cass's little secret though. While she was new to the paranormal community, she had turned to it because she was looking for a way to contact her younger brother, Owen, who she lost in a terrible accident when they were children. She received her invitation in this very, very weird manner where a very odd limousine driver slowly pulled up to her on the sidewalk, gave her a piece of paper, and offered her a chance to contact her brother. So with that, she was here. Just a quick note, while I'm recapping these stories, I am going to start talking about Cass in the third person just for my brain. Finally, our conversation was interrupted as the host appeared on the steps wearing this beautiful red suit as he baited us to enter into the dining hall before the main event later that night.
Dinner is now served. I'm your host. We're calling Mr. Plutus. Please enjoy yourselves. Come, food's away.
So we entered for dinner and we found our table seatings, and the dinner was absolutely delicious. Reverie Studios did a really amazing job of making sure there are both vegan and gluten-free options, and I forgot to take pictures, I'm so sorry, but my steak tips were delicious. So at dinner, Cass was pretty much trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Half of her table, people were talking about having the ability to see ghosts and knowing about this mysterious paranormal house, and the other half of her table was full of skeptics who were heckling the other half, and were talking about the show that was going to be put on later. So throughout dinner, the host was making his way from table to table, talking to his guests, making conversation. And when he got to Cass's table, Cass took that as the opportunity to figure out what was going on. So he clued her in that in his travels, he had gotten an occult recommendation to gather these specific groups of people on this night for the purpose of a ritual that would thin the veil between the mortal and ethereal plane. To which Cass was like, is this even safe? And he, of course, was just like, oh yes, I've done my research, I know everything's fine, everything's great, I know it, we're fine, we're good, I'm a rich man at school. And to which, Cass, the off-duty paramedic, was highly skeptical. Okay, so fast forwarding to the ritual, we were ushered upstairs after dinner, and here's a picture because that's worth a million words. What you may not be seeing along this triangle, this triad, you see the grim portents on each corner, but along each of these lines are these various like trinkets and little statuettes. Like there was a demonic skull of an animal that we don't have on this plane. And there was like little effigy like dolls, which was just a lot of things where if you walked into somebody's house, you would stare at with either curiosity or fascination or concern. And really, Cass fell in that last one. But big kudos to the Reverie team. They knocked it out of the park with this room. It was terrifying. So now that we had a good amount of time to inspect the ritual room and become thoroughly concerned for ourselves, it was time for the ritual to begin, and we were ushered to our seats. The host and his partner had gone around dinner earlier, selecting certain people to participate in the ritual as it had been ordained or cultly for him to do so. So these people took their places around the ritual triangle, playing the part that they were instructed to play. And the host takes out this massive tome and a red skull and begins flipping through it and reading some passages from the tome and then instructing us to repeat phrases back in a massive chorus and chanting, ritual stuff. And then from there, it got wild. The host takes the skull, lets out a roar, throws it on the ground, and then he falls back onto the ground, and then all of a sudden he gets up on all fours and starts charging a participant. From there, Cass's attention is immediately turned away because Gillian Crisp, a world-renowned writer, bestseller known for her murder mysteries, Cass had met at dinner, started convulsing and seizing next to her and trying to slide out of her seat. So Cass's paramedic mode is engaged, and then on top of that, we were told that during the ritual we could not leave our seat because the floor is lava. So she's desperately trying to grab onto Jillian and keep her from sliding on out of the seat. And then at one point, Cass looks back up into what's happening in the ritual situation. Everybody's scattered. They were, of course, not supposed to leave their positions, but it's chaos. At one point, somebody grabs a sword and starts fighting the host, or trying to fight the host, and the host rips the sword away from them. Meanwhile, Cass is still trying to keep Jillian from sliding herself onto the floor. And at that point, the partner of the host, the assistant, just finally just tells us to get out of the ritual room. And Cass is like, gone, and grabs Jillian and is just moving her and shuffling her out of the room, gets her to a chair, makes sure she's safe, and then tries to go back to see what else she can do. So Cass makes her way back to the ritual room. Everybody is like outside of the hallway into the ritual room, and the host partner is standing outside the ritual room doors like this. The doors closed and locked behind her, and Cass is like, yo, what's up? And the ritual partner is just like, nah, everything's fine, everything's under control, just go explore the house, refreshments are gonna be served, enjoy your night. And Cass is like, yo, no, what's up? And is just not getting anything out of this lady. And slowly people are starting to disperse, just like, that was wild. Skeptics are like, that was a wild show. Meanwhile, it's utter chaos as we're kind of just ramping out of this adrenaline-filled scene. So now with the ritual completed and the veil efficiently thinned, the true part of the night begins. I will say so many things happened over the course of the night. I will try to recount the highlights as succinctly as possible. Post-ritual, it became Cass's main mission to keep everybody safe. A lot of the night was spent patrolling from room to room, just making sure everyone was safe. And that being said, I don't remember the first person who Cass pronounced dead. I have a sneaking suspicion it was a Sutherland, one of the cursed family members, but I cannot be sure. All I remember is Cass running to their side, immediately checking their vitals and pronouncing them dead with Owen, her deceased brother's Spider-Man watch, which is so yikes on so many levels. For a decent amount of time, Cass was actually keeping a pretty healthy skepticism for all the mysterious and inexplicable things going on around her. She was far more concerned about the people, around her not dying. And so it honestly became a running joke as she started to pass certain characters for them to go, like to stop her and just say, "Oh, Cass, are you okay? You look tired." And mind you, this is as she's going from room to room pronouncing people dead. At one point, Cass walks into a room, looks, makes sure everybody's okay, comes back out, and somebody she just passed, sitting in the chair, same chair, is sitting there with a gunshot wound to his head, dead, and just there are other people in this room. She turns to one person, points at them, they shrug, and she just yells, "Why am I even here?" and just storms out the room. And then she was brought before this amazing character, Lady Death. So, some background for this. There's a psychiatrist at Cass's dinner table that they had met. They had interacted multiple times over the night. But at one point she comes, she finds Cass. She says, "Oh, Cass, you have to meet this actress. She is amazing. This place really did their research," still thinking that this is a really elaborate murder mystery party. So Cass is brought in front of this individual, equal parts sweet and terrifying, clad in all black. And they just simply ask for Cass's name. Now, it is important to note that while I could see a terrifying spirit standing behind them with a horse skull on, just floating there, Cass could not, and acted accordingly. Cass gives her name, and so Lady Death begins to look through her book, just flipping, and meanwhile, her psychiatrist friend is just heckling this woman just the entire time, just, "Oh, look at her little book, oh, this is so great, this is so good," right? And meanwhile, Cass is barely paying attention. She's looking up and down the hallway, still trying to keep tabs on the entire situation, making sure no one's stabbing each other or anything crazy like that. And then Lady Death gets to her entry, I guess. She reads a little bit, she grimaces, and she looks up at Cass, and Cass is just like, "What?" And she looks at her like a wounded puppy, as she just says, "Oh, Cass, how are you doing? You look tired." And at this point, Cass is just so annoyed with hearing that statement. She's like, "Yeah, I get it. I look tired. I am tired. I have dark circles under my eyes. I get it. Yes, it's not funny anymore." And then Lady Death follows it up with, "No, I really shouldn't tell you this because it would be breaking rules." And she looks turned up, and Cass is like, "What? What do you need to tell me? What? What? And she says, "Owen's been asking about you, and I feel Cass's heart just bottom out and exit her body. It is such. It was hard. It was a hard situation. Immediately Cass is just like, "How do you know that name? You shouldn't know that name. You guys are sick for digging into people's past like that." In which Lady Death just says, "He wouldn't want you to live like this." And Cass knows she's referring to this constant blame, this constant guilt trip she's had since she was a child, blaming herself for her brother's death. And man, I've never experienced so many stages of grief so rapidly. And afterwards, Cass got an in-character drink, and that was wild. From there, it was back-to-back meaningful interactions. So Cass takes her drink, goes upstairs, goes to try to find a quiet little corner where she can be with her thoughts, be with her drink. Wonderful. And instead she finds Ted. Ted, her former math teacher. Now Ted is also in the camp of, "Oh, look at these crazy theatrics," but Ted is legitimately having a great time at this party. He is enjoying the entire situation. making the most of it, great personality, happy to be here. And so Cass, because Ted would have known about Cass's history, would have known about Owen because he was her teacher, would have been in her file. So Cass starts talking to him about everything that Lady Death said, and Ted is absorbing, and then Cass also lets slip that she's pronounced like 4 or 5 people dead, to which Ted is like a little very, 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 very tidily surprised. Cass is wrapped up in her own world, I noticed, but Cass is wrapped up in her own world, it's fine. And so pretty much this conversation ends up with like us both just like, what is going on here, really? Like, really? And Ted gives Cass some pretty great advice. Ted says, you know, maybe we should both see what this house has to offer. Which Cass agrees. He's like, yeah, let's do that. Remember Ted. We'll be seeing Ted later. So Cass then goes to the basement floor. She had heard that a rave was going to be happening later on in the evening, and you know, she's in, I'm just going to experience the house mode, whatever that means. And that's when she runs into Sam, Death's artist. And I just want to pause here for a second because this character was so freaking cool. I wish I could have just watched their storyline all night, because from what I saw, they went through some stuff. They're just amazing character. I digress. Alright, so Cass comes downstairs. She's looking at the basement, just observing what's going on, and is standing next to this individual and notices that they're holding their sketchbook to their chest and they're like staring at Cass's watch, and eventually they just remark, what an interesting watch. And Cass just, after what happened with Lady Death, Cass is guarded, Cass is tired, but Cass is playing along, and so they're talking, and eventually Sam reveals that they're able to see things attached to objects, attached to items, attached to maybe even feelings. And Sam is like accurately guessing things that Cass is like oh, what do you see? And Sam described Owen, described the situation, described like a younger brother lovingly looking at their sister or something like that, and Cass loses it. She breaks down, she tells Sam all about the accident. It's very, very emotional. And I mean, I'm very clearly not a trained actress, but I cried so many times over the course of the night. Like, it just came out. So jumping out of the story time for a second, this is an interesting scene because this scene wasn't happenstance. So it's normal in some of these LARPs, some of the Nordic style LARPs, to want to have specific scenes to happen for your character. So you might come in, you might coordinate with the game masters, you may coordinate with other players to kind of make a scene that you want to happen for your character to happen. An example like this for the Haunting of Grey Manor would be maybe like a huge seance, or maybe in a very elaborate death scene. I didn't go into this LARP with any desire to have any premeditated scenes. I tend to like just to have like flat out the improv of just regular interactions, but during the workshop, Sam's player and I were actually paired together for one of the exercises where we're supposed to be finding commonalities between our characters. They noticed my watch, and so I just played devil's advocate and was like, hey, what vibe do you get from this? And they pretty much guessed most things about Owen without me supplying anything, and we just thought that was so cool. We decided it's like, this would be a really cool in-character interaction to have, and so we didn't make a time or a place to like meet up and have this interaction, but when it kind of felt like it was the right time and we just happened to be in the same place, it happened. And so I think it's really, really cool to be open to that as a new player. Like, I like organic interactions, but this is also an option, so leave yourself open to the possibility. Okay, so jumping back into the storyline with Cass. So after they finish talking with Sam, Cass is emotionally drained. They sit down at the rave. They find a table on the side. I think at one point there's a ritual that happens that clears out the entire room, but honestly, Cass has no idea because she was so kind of wrapped up in what was happening internally in her mind at that point, just with all the emotions she had felt. And by the time she's ready to get up, I think actually Jillian comes down and tries to help and encourage her to go upstairs. She passes by the medium and the psychiatrist that took her to Lady Death earlier, having this emotional interaction. And this medium is saying consoling words to the psychiatrist, and the words that she is saying just start resonating with something in Cass's mind. It just like backs her into this emotional corner, and I think physically as well. And by the time Cass is like trying to leave the room, she is empty. There is nothing there except exhausted apathy. So finally, Cass begins to try to make it up the stairwell with Jillian's help. And at one point, Jillian turns to her and notices that like her face is just settling into this hard exterior. And she was like, "Oh my God, are you all right?" And Cass just responds with the most deadpan and an exhausted voice, just so tired. And after that point, the night is just kind of this whirl of events, and then Cass is just trudging indifferently through it. So as people died, Cass would just appear, declare the time of death, and then leave. It got to this point where she would hear an altercation, excuse herself from the current conversation that she was part of, and go and follow the altercation and watch it like this arbiter of death. Over time, the house just continues to close itself off more and more to those of the living, and it's forcing us all up to the topmost 4th floor. And eventually we get to a point where we are all on the same floor, and there's just this ghoulish sound coming from below of just all of the spirits and all of the people that we came in with who are just lying in wait for, I guess, the rest of us to join them. And so there's a moment where Cass is looking down at the balcony, not being able to see any of the things that are happening, but just hearing all of the weird and ominous noises that are happening below. And she's joined by a crystal saleswoman. They sit down together and get chatting. So while talking to the crystal saleswoman, she brings up Ted. You remember Ted? Good old Ted. So she says that there was a point where they were talking and he was holding a knife, and he asked her if she would like him to kill her. Because, if she doesn't die now, it's just going to be more painful later. Okay, so 2 things about this conversation. First one, Cass vaguely remembers in her apathetic state giving Ted a knife to kill Magical Vey. Magical Vey I could talk about for hours, but TLDR, they were this all-powerful demon that gave power through brokered contracts, and honestly was probably responsible for 90% of the deaths in the house. Hence, Cass saying, gosh, she needs to be taken out. Number two, while they're having this conversation, and while the crystal dealer is telling Cass about Ted saying these words, as she is saying these words, Cass turns and looks at the stairs, and Ted is coming up the stairs with the knife in his hand. Yeah, so Ted is coming up to the 4th floor. He looks a little bit haggard from the last time Cass had spoken to him, and Cass was just like, "Hey, buddy, well, I see you still have that knife." Because at this point, it's really just the 3 of them, Crystal Dealer, Cass, and Ted, and the knife, so I guess the 4 of them. And there's some very tense conversation that transpires, and eventually Cass just asks Purgblade, because once again, we tired, are you about to kill us with that knife? And Ted's just like, of course not. Effectively, that ends the conversation, and he just then starts to walk around the 4th floor with the knife, and that's fine. That's no big deal. It's cool. At this point, normal. So now, with most of the evening behind us, it was time to move into the final stage of the night, escaping the house. The showrunners announced that it was time to move into the final thing, and that we were now expected to find our way out of the house. Now, what the living took that to mean was to immediately right now is the time to go. We're mobilizing, we're getting up, we're getting out. And so we immediately began to mobilize, and we're running down the stairs, running little resistance, not having much issue. And it wasn't until we get out of the house where there's a realization that the spirits were having a little bit of a spirit rally, and there was supposed to be some transition time, and we were supposed to kind of fight through the spirits, but we kind of we were a little bit too efficient. So everybody had fun, so nothing was wrong, everything was great. It was just a little funny because the spirits come back up and we're already out of the house, and they're just like, yo bro, what happened? While we were escaping, there were a couple of spirits that were in the hallway still trying to get certain individuals to stay or push them out of the house specifically. And among those spirits was Lady Death. And so there's this very cinematic moment of everybody kind of rushing down the stairs, moving. And Cass sees Lady Death and Lady Death sees Cass. And Lady Death, there's a pause, a freeze frame moment. And Lady Death looks at Cass and just says, "Now do you understand? He wants you to live for yourself." And I could feel the tears starting again as Cass just nods, and she's swept away down with the people down the stairs, continuing down and out of the house. And I'll divulge now that we're nearing the end that the person who played Lady Death actually also wrote my character. And I didn't find this out until a little bit after the fact, and my mind was just blown to have such wonderful and meaningful interactions between the writer and the character. Was so wild and cool. What, BB? You wanna be here for the end? Okay. Alright, Beeper. You like your big good kitty? Okay. Once we escaped the house, it was time for the Dance of the Dead, the official game's end. The living went around back into the basement and rejoined the spirits, and we quite literally danced out of our characters and back into ourselves. It was a really cool way of kind of internalizing and recognizing that we were once again ourselves and that the make-believe was over. Game off. So fast forward to the next day, it was time for debrief. Debrief and LARP is a time where you come back together and you pretty much unpack the experience as a group. It kind of solidifies and allows you to process things that you and your character may have felt. So at the debrief, I had the opportunity to talk to Cosmarie, or as some of you know her, LARP Girl. Absolutely wonderful, check out her channel. But she said something so very profound that is still sticking with me to this day. She said that even while we're LARPing, even while we're playing make-believe, our brains don't experience it like that. So when we are scared, when our character is scared, our brain is still processing that as our fear. Same with other extreme emotions. For this reason, I find debriefing actually really helpful. It pretty much gives you a platform for introspection, allows you a time to analyze your interactions and experiences, and honestly give you a chance to learn from your character. If you can delay your flight or delay your travel times and make it to debrief, I would 100% recommend that. It was an absolute pleasure attending the event by Reverie Studios. The time, the energy, the thought, and the care that they put into this event really showed with the Haunting of Grey Manor. It's an amazingly talented team, and everybody is so passionate and wonderful at what they do. I would 100% recommend going to any of their events. I just want to thank you for watching this video and making it to the end. If you happen to like this video, consider pressing the like button down below, and if you want to see more of my LARPing or otherwise journey, consider subscribing as well. I hope you have a wonderful day. Alright, bye. Alrighty, it is time to record. Finally, the first time in forever.
I can't focus. Yeah, you're covering me in hair.
Why are your nails in my thigh? Put your nails back in, you psycho. You're clicking. My room clicks like Predator. It seems pretty normal for. Can you truck? Yeah, really rev that engine. Really rev it. Rev it. Great. Thanks. Love it. City living, man. I've been a country bumpkin for so long. Whole new world. When I found out Phil. Hey. How's it going? It's me. Hey. I haven't had any tea. My lights are an interesting thing in this room. Lots of windows, but also lots of darkness. But also, I have my ring light out today, so I'm getting a little bit more consistency. But I mean, when the sun is out, the sun is out. When it's not, it's not. Yeah, okay.